The New Jersey Devils have been extremely busy the last week, from trades, the draft, and free agency coming up. A lot going on in New Jersey Devils world. We dive into everything coming up next. Oh, baby. Yes, sir. It is Danny McDonough with Devil's Puck Luck. It is great to be back. We've been away for a little bit, but Adam and I are going to be jumping on together very soon. It has been crazy the last few weeks in the Devils world, especially, right after the Stanley Cup final. They didn't do it at the draft, so I'm going to go ahead and congratulate the Florida Panthers for winning the Stanley Cup. That was a very good series. Seeing Edmonton come back down 3-0 to force a Game 7 was pretty incredible. I think a lot of Devils fans out there were rooting for Adam Henrique to win that cup. We're going to dive into Adam Henrique a little later, but let's start from the top. We got a lot to discuss. First, obviously, Sheldon Keefe coming in as the New Jersey Devils head coach. I think a lot of people were seeing that come to fruition, especially after Toronto did not keep him, obviously, and he was let go by Toronto. He's going to be a great coach. There was obviously some other front runners for the job, Berube being one of them. Obviously, people were talking about Dineen too as well. But I think Sheldon Keefe was the right choice. I was hoping for Keefe before Woodcroft. So I'm really excited. I think that the coaching carousel that the New Jersey Devils have had over the last few years and all that has gone on with Lindy Ruff and obviously the down year, and Travis Green, this was the right move. Sheldon Keefe he's a very good coach, and he's going to change the system here and change the culture. And that's what we need moving forward. So let's talk about one of the biggest things, goaltending. Jacob Markstrom is that 1A that we got now. We have our goalie. He's on 2 years. Calgary retained some of that salary too in the trade. That was Kevin Ball going back the other way, and a first for next year too that's protected. Listen, this was a very easy trade to make for Tom Fitzgerald. I think that Fitz probably did offer Holtz before he offered Ball. I don't know that for sure. I'm speculating on that. We needed to send a very good defenseman that was NHL ready back to Calgary to make this trade happen. And you're going to do it every time. Kevin Ball will be missed. I like Kevin Ball a lot. I'm going to remember him for how he played, against the Rangers, along with Akira too, which we'll get to in just a minute. But Kevin Ball going back to Calgary along with that first to get our number one goalie, Jacob Markstrom, who is going to be tandem with Allen as a backup. So listen, we have a duo, number one, that is not going to cost us a lot. So we have some cap space, obviously, to work with both goaltenders really not being highly paid, which is absolutely phenomenal, just for cap space reasons, to get more of the players that we need to get. That Fitz described. He wanted to get heavier, he wanted to get more physical, and he wanted to change the complexion of this team, which I think he has, and I think he is doing. And the Devils have been very, very busy. Moving on to another trade, and this is going to tie into the draft, which we're going to talk about as well. John Marino, we've been hearing that if the Devils were going to sign Brett Pesce, which it looks like they're going to, John Marino would be the odd man out, and he is a good bargaining chip and a good chip to trade to clear cap space, obviously, but he would just be the odd man out, obviously, in the sixth defenseman right there for the Devils. I like John Marino a lot. I think he had a down year, but I think his stock is still high, and good for him going to Utah. He's going to be playing with Sergachev too, which I think was a massive surprise around the league that he was moved by the Lightning. So he's going to go into a good situation there where he's going to be a top defenseman, and we get a pick coming back as well. Listen, it's a good trade. It's what we need to do, and we got that second pick in the draft, which turns out to be a goalie, and a big goalie, a guy from Russia that is supposed to be lights out, even though he had a little bit of a down year, his last year, even though he's on a bad team. I was reading a lot about it. This is what we needed to do. After moving on from Akira Schmid, who was going to be a restricted free agent, we needed to do this. We needed to draft a goalie, and we got our goalie, and in the second round. So, that could be a phenomenal trade. And in 3 years, we can be talking about how great of a trade that is from Fitz, sending John Marino to Utah for this number 2 pick, which turned out to be a goalie. Going to the number 1 pick, a lot of Devils fans, just going on Twitter and reading all the comments were very disappointed. I wasn't. I thought this was a great pick. I like Dickinson too. I know Dickinson was on a lot of people's mind, but we get the Russian 6'7", 210 pounds, I believe, 18 years old, Anton Silyev, who I think is going to be a stud, and I know that he is not going to be as NHL ready that a player like Dickinson would be, and they were closer to that level. But I think that Fitz is really building this culture and building what he wants on the blue line and getting that big guy that I've heard compared to Zdeno Chara, Victor Hedman. Just to be compared at such a young age, two players like that, to take a chance on a number one pick, the 10th overall, is worth it all day. I think it was a great pick, and I understand why Devils fans seem to be a little upset about it, just because he wasn't as close to being ready for the NHL, as other players. I think it's a great pick, and obviously time's going to tell. We have fumbled over the years on some of our first round picks, Holtz being one of them, which we're going to get to in a minute in another trade. But I thought the Devils had a very successful draft. By the way, it looked absolutely phenomenal at the Sphere. I think that the NHL in general this last year, especially in the playoffs, have made a lot of noise and they're buzzing. And I think this was a great year just for money standpoint, and just the popularity of the league. To me, it seems like it's growing more and more. And being in Vegas at the Sphere, I thought it was an incredible way to really kick off the offseason to go into free agency, which is going to start on July 1st, which is tomorrow. So a lot going on again in the Devils world. We knew a lot of moving pieces were going to happen. We knew there was a lot of moving parts that Fitz really wanted to make sure that cap space became available, that roster spots became available to really bring this team in the direction that it needed to go. I have been saying for probably 4 months how much I liked Brendan Dillon, who has been on the radar for Fitz. I still think that he is a piece that Fitz wants to bring in, with Brett Pesce obviously being the guy that everybody's talking about, has a connection with Dougie Hamilton. He's very similar to John Marino, but he's going to be a better penalty killer. He has a little bit more veteran experience, and I don't think it's as big of a step from the money that we were spending obviously on Marino. Yes, it's going to be about 1.5 million, probably more a year. But to me, I think that Fitz can work out a deal that's going to be a 5 or 6 year deal. I'm hoping around 5.5. I would assume it's probably going to be 6. I'm sure Pesce's camp wants somewhere around 6.5. I think we'd be happy with a 5 or 6 year deal at 5.5 or $6 million. I think that both sides would be happy with that deal. I think that Pesce is going to work extremely well with this new Devil system that Keefe is going to unfold. And it's just going to make us it's going to make us better right away, having Pesce. But we still need that left-handed defenseman, and that's where we talk about Dillon. I know Zadorov has been on a lot of fans' radar. He's going to be demanding a lot more money, especially with how he performed in the playoffs. It's going to chew up a lot more cap, and that's the thing. I think if that you go on, you get Zadorov, and if you got Pesce, I think that's going to kind of cripple what Fitz wants to do for your top 6 and for your bottom 6. So I think you look at a player like Brendan Dillon, who's not going to cost as much money. The term's going to be a lot better. You're looking probably at 3 years, 3.5 million, maybe even 3.25. I think Fitz can work that out. And I think that players want to be here. I think they see how this core is really structured. And I think players want to be here. And I'm really hoping that Brendan Dillon does sign with the Devils. I've been a big fan of him. I know he's a little bit older, but that veteran experience, I think I think he'd be great for Nemitz. I really do. I think they'd be a great pairing. I definitely could see it. The Devils did just make another move too right before we jumped on to record this. The Devils traded with the Montreal Canadiens a 4th round pick in 2026. And listen, the Canadiens have a plethora of right-handed defensemen. And I think this was a good move. Kovacevic, I believe it's how it's pronounced. Montreal Canadian fans, I did not know a lot about this player, just seeing obviously the highlights, reading up about him recently. He looks like a very solid defenseman, very stay-at-home defenseman that does not make mistakes and does not make boneheaded plays. He's a very sturdy defenseman that I think will add to the depth. Do I think that this is the player that Fitz is going to roll with and Pesce and that's it. Do I think that just Pesci is going to be the big signing when it comes to free agency on the defensive side of the puck? No. I still think that we need a player like Brendan Dillon. And obviously, with Tanev going to Toronto Maple Leafs, you knew that was off the table now. And I think Zadorov's a big asking price. So I think that you look at what the big picture is. I think Brendan Dillon will fit into this role very well. And listen, I could be wrong. Maybe Fitz goes out and gets Stamkos and he gets Henrique, and he spends the money a little differently. But I do think that it's important to really amplify what our defense could be, especially with these young kids. I think having a player like Brendan Dillon, a player like Pesci, is going to really open up the ice more for Luke Hughes and Nemitz to make those plays and to take those chances with pairings that you have that backup. And I think that's a very important factor for Fitz looking at defense. So I think Fitz has made some of the right moves right now to clear up that cap space and really to target the guys that he wants. He wants Pesci. It's been known around the league that he wants Pesci. Friedman really, I think he had that on his podcast, 32 Thoughts, weeks ago, that the Devils were really targeting him and really had their eye on him and that they wanted him to be a New Jersey Devil. And I think that's the first signing you're going to hear at noon Monday, July 1st, that Pesci is a New Jersey Devil. Excuse me. And I think it's going to be for around $5.76 million a year, 5 or 6 years when it comes to term. And I think you move on now to what the Devils have done and what Fitz has done to clear some of that cap space. And we're going to talk about that cap space. And we're going to talk about Akira Schmid, and we're going to talk about Alexander Holtz being traded to Vegas for a player named Paul Cotter, who is a very, very good fourth liner. He's very, very strong on the puck, extremely, extremely fast, which I was surprised about looking at a lot of his highlights and watching a lot of the film on him. I think he's going to fit extremely well on a fourth line with a player like Lazar. We'll get to Bastian too, who, if I were Fitz, I would probably look to move Bastian for a late round pick. I just don't think he fits the complexion of this team on that fourth line, and I think there could be better options. Adam spoke about it last year, how he saw glimpses of Bastian not being the guy that fits into what the fourth line can do, because he is a big body and wasn't utilizing it the way he should have. Again, with Sheldon Keefe here, maybe that's a different story, and maybe I'm dead wrong, and Bastian plays phenomenal on the fourth line, with a player like Lazar and with a player like Cotter. So we're going to see. But I like this move. And I know a lot of Devils fans, when you look at it from the outside looking in, Devils fans had, how do I put this? They had an extreme love for Alexander Holtz. I was very vocal in the preseason last year that I thought Alexander Holtz was not ready. He was getting a shot on top six in preseason. And then when the season started, he was dropped basically down to the third and fourth line. His development, I do blame, obviously, some of it on Lindy Ruff, on Tom Fitzgerald. I think that there was some bad asset management there. But I also want to put some blame on the actual player. I want to put it on Alexander Holtz. I think had many opportunities to take advantage of the situation he was in, especially with all the injuries, and to really develop and to really just buckle down and become that two-way player that Fitz was looking for, that Lindy Ruff was looking for, that Travis Green was looking for. And I understand that he had some point production, especially in the middle of the year, that he had some opportunity. I see stats so much. I see stats so much in the Twitter world, on all social media, how Holtz was producing at a higher level, expected goals when he's on the ice, but his ice time's diminished. He was a liability. Holtz did not have what it took to be a regular NHL player. And I know that might hurt some Devils fans' feelings. I liked Alexander Holtz as well. I root for the kid. I hope he does really well out in Vegas. He just wasn't where he needed to be on this team and to be a staple on this team and to fit into the future core of this team. He needed the change of scenery. I'm glad he got it. And I think that he has a chance to do well with a different coaching system. And maybe this lights a fire under his ass that he knows that he has to develop his game to be a regular in the NHL. And I go back to the trade, the Markstrom trade that Kevin Ball was involved with. The reason why I think that Holtz was the first name out of Fitz's mouth to Conroy, he's been on the trading block for a year and a half. I feel like the Devils have been dangling him out there to be traded for years, you know? So I think around the league, there is a bubble around this kid that they don't believe in him, you know? And there's, it's a negative connotation to who he is and what they see him as a player, and they don't think he's that good to be 7th overall pick in the draft. And again, is that a failed pick? Yeah, you could say that. You know, with the Devils organization, you could say that. However, there's going to be draft picks that don't pan out. Holtz is a guy that did not pan out to what we thought he could be. And his two-way game, his 200-foot game struggled mightily. And it wasn't just one coach, you know? And then we go back to the coaching situation where everybody was like, oh, Lindy Ruff is destroying this kid. Travis Green is destroying this kid. But it's from multiple coaches and it's from multiple GMs who did not want this kid. And we dumped him. On paper, it looks terrible, right? On paper, it looks like we got fleeced by Vegas. But we didn't, in my opinion. I don't think Alexander Holtz had a place on this team anymore. And I wish the kid best of luck, but I just think this was the right move. You clear up a roster spot as well, you know, with Akira Schmid, who, again, I feel the same way. I think Akira Schmid was getting outplayed by Poulter, you know, last year, toward the end of last year. And you look at what we have now, Markstrom Allen tandem in the NHL. And then you got Dawson Poulter in the AHL in Utica. And I think that he was basically fit on the depth chart. And as a restricted free agent, it was time to move him, you know, and, you know, Vegas didn't even pick up and give him an offer. You know, so you sit back and look at it now, everything that's happened. And I like this trade. You know, I like this trade. I understand that Devils fans still think that we got fleeced, but I like it. You know, we got a pick and we got a player who I think will be on our fourth line and I think will be impactful. And I think you're trying to replace what Michael McLeod brought to this team with great hands, great puck handling skills, fast through the neutral zone, developing plays, strong on the boards. He hits, man. This kid hits too. So I think we got a very good player. And at $775,000 a year, you got a deal. You know, you got a great deal for him. And that's for next year as well. So I think this was a good move. And again, I understand the aura around who Holtz was and the love for Akira, especially after he basically helped us win that Rangers series in the playoffs a couple years ago. You can't hold on to it, right? That was kind of his flash in the pan, his time to shine. And if you look at it as a whole, that's really what he did, right? That he had a great end of the year into the playoffs. But after that, he's an average to a below average goalie, you know? And I hope that change of scenery for him as well will help him develop. He's still a young kid. He still has a lot of time to develop. So I wish him all the best too. And I think Fitz is really pushing all the right buttons. You know, with the draft, with free agency coming up, I think that he has the targets that he knows he wants. Brett Pesce obviously being the first one, I think that'll fall quickly. I think that he's going to get Brendan Dillon. You know, I really do. I know we made the trade with Montreal today and we added to the depth on our defense, but I really do think that he's eyeing Brendan Dillon. And I think he'd be a very good fit with the Devils. And then now you move on to what are the Devils going to do in free agency? What is the complexion of this team going to be? Who is going to be on Jack's wing? Who is going to be our third line center? Is Mercer going to get a deal? And who's going to be our fourth line center if it's not Lazar? I want to start with Adam Henrique. Adam Henrique's stock went up after the Stanley Cup final because his line played absolutely incredible. He had a great Stanley Cup final. Connor Brown had a great final. Very exciting series. And Adam Henrique had a game-winning goal, you know, in that series too. So, you know, I think his stock went up. And obviously he's aging. You know, he's a veteran. He's mid-30s. But that nostalgia, right? That nostalgia to come back to New Jersey and to be able to wind down your career where you started it all. You know, I think we think about 2012 against the Rangers, going to the Stanley Cup Finals to play the Kings, and unfortunately, ultimately lose to the Kings. But you know, it's a great idea. Let me put it like that. I don't know if Fitz is going to offer him anything. I don't. You know, I think it would make sense. But I'm not sure. And, you know, I know there's been interviews out there, and I know that Henrique is on record saying that it's not about the money to him. There's been people posting, you know, it's goodbye for now, New Jersey, when he left Jersey back in the day, and it's over for now, but he'll be back, kind of, you know, alluding that he wants to come back here and finish his career. And I think it'd be great if he does, you know, but it has to be for the right price, and it has to be fitting into what Fitz wants to do. Adam Henrique fits the mold of what we do need in the bottom six. Being strong center, we got to be strong down the middle. And I know that people don't talk about it too often, but losing Michael McLeod was massive. Was massive. He was phenomenal down the middle of the ice. Adam Henrique is going to bring that to the penalty kill as well. Face-offs, board battling, can still develop plays, can still make plays, and I think that he would be a good fit for the team. Do I think around $4 million, 4.25? No, I do not. And I think that there's going to be teams out there that are going to offer him $3.5, $4 million. To me, I think Fitz would probably offer him half. You know, at the end of the day, if you get more years, maybe he gets more years and he can come at a lesser price. He's a guy that, yes, we are looking at, obviously, for the bottom six. Another guy I'm looking at is Carrier. I think that he'd be a good pickup as well. When you look up at the top six and the forwards, with Steven Stamkos, which is still bananas to me that he is not going to be a Lightning, it still can happen that he still can be a Bolt. You know, it's I've seen crazier things in the NHL where it's like, oh, they're stopping negotiation talks and they're at a standstill, and the next thing you know, on Monday night, July 1st, Steven Stamkos is still a Lightning. But if I'm Fitz, I'm making a call. I'm making a phone call, especially if he only wants $4 million a year, 4.5. I know that the Lightning offered him about 3 a year, and he just gave him a lot of years. Um, you know, if it's Fitz, what do you do? Do you give him 4.5, 3-year deal? You know, I think that he'd be great. I think he's a great veteran presence, obviously, Stanley Cup champion. I think he'd be absolutely phenomenal in our top six. I'm not sold that it's going to happen, but I think that Fitz has to explore that option, obviously. Someone for me that I think is not a lot of Devils fans have talked about it. Marcia Show he's a phenomenal player. He's going to come at a price as well. Duclair has been on the radar as well. You know, obviously with Reinhart going to be obviously extending, it looks like with Florida he's off, but he's going to cost way too much for the Devils. But if you look at everything as a whole, we have about $20 million in cap space. You know, so you assume that the Devils go out and they sign Brett Pesce, let's say for $6 million. They go higher with Dylan, 3.5. You still have a little over $10 million to play with to round out your top six forwards and your bottom six. And I think that Fitz can get away with getting 3 guys there. I really do. And I think that Fitz, I trust what Fitz is doing. I think that he's had a plan all along. I think he planned on dumping some cap to make the moves that he wants to make. And I'm relatively sold that before the Stanley Cup final was even over, that he knew the guys that he wanted to target. And I honestly do not know who that guy is going to be when it comes to a top six forward. I think there's a lot of names out there. I think that he has probably 3 off the top of his head that he would want to. I think Duclair's one of them. I really do. The Tyler Bertuzzi one is interesting to me. Now with Max Domi, you know, getting extended at Toronto, with the whole situation going on there, you know, with the lead in their situation, is he going to get an extension there? Is he going to re-sign with them? Or is he going to be a free agent? Is he going to test the market? Which it looks like he will. But a lot of people, and myself included, think that Bertuzzi can be a bit overrated at times. He's a streaky player, but he does bring a fight and he does bring a grit that I really like. And for the right price, I would not mind him being a Devil. Duclair again is up there for me, but Steven Stamkos would just, I think if you brought a player of that caliber here, it's just going to make Jack Hughes play even more out of his mind, you know. And I think that having him in the top six would really be a compliment to these young kids. You know, just to be able to learn from a guy like Steven Stamkos and to really start developing their game, to get stronger, you know, to get more physical, to know what it is to win playoff hockey games. And I think that goes back to how the roster is being developed and how the roster is being constructed. Fitz is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And that's why I really like the plan and everything that Fitz has done and all the buttons that he's pushed. He got some depth, obviously, when it comes to defense via trade today. You know, moving John Marino to make that room for what seems to be Brett Pesce coming in. He has in his mind where this Devils organization needs to go, not just for this year, but for years to come. And we're not sacrificing the future. We're just not. It's kind of bananas to think about too. I think myself and everyone thought that that 10th overall pick was going to be traded, whether it was for a goalie before we got Markstrom, whether it was for a bigger name defenseman. I think everybody thought that that 10th overall pick was going to be traded, and I really like that it wasn't, especially for who we took. I think getting a guy that is compared to Zdeno Chara, and I know that is crazy to think about, and it's way too early to even think about that. But it's really changing the complexion of what this future is going to look like and how our blue line is going to look in years to come. When Dougie Hamilton isn't a Devil anymore, and you have a player like Casey coming up as well. We have so many guys in the pipeline when it comes to defense that I think this was the right move to get this type of player who hits everything, who is fast on his feet at 18 years old. He's 6'7", 210, but he's 18 years old. This kid's going to get bigger and stronger, so I don't think we're going to see him until 26, 27 in the NHL. But it's just exciting as a Devils fan to really see what Fitz did via the draft and via trades and where we took that Russian goalie. And again, that John Marino trade, I don't think will go for naught. I really do think that we could have a diamond in the rough with the most sought out goalie in the draft. And we got him in the second round from that pick that we got back from Utah. So all good things for me. Draft wise, I gave Fitz an A. I really give him an A. Again, I know a lot of fans really wanted Dickinson, Bume, I think it's how you pronounce it. I know there was a lot of other players that were on the board for the Devils that they thought would be a better fit, but I'm sticking by what Fitz is doing. I think he has a master plan for years to come, and I think that he's going all in now in a sense of without sacrificing the future, keeping this core intact, adding the pieces to be a cup contender. If Markstrom can play like a Vezina Trophy winner that he was or could be, this team could make a lot of noise, and for what it's worth, it's you still put the Rangers and Canes right up there on top until the Devils prove that they could be better. And right now, I think the Devils, where they stand, are going to compete very hard with the Rangers and the Canes, in that Metro division. I also have no idea, by the way, just a little aside, what the Penguins are doing. They are so old down the middle of the ice. I have zero idea what they're doing after they acquired Hayes. I have no idea what they're doing. It blows my mind, actually. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know what the Caps are doing either. Very, very interesting what's going on around the Metro, and I think the Devils are really solidifying themselves to be a top 3 team in the Metro division for years to come. Coming off a very down year with a lot of injuries last year and so many things going on, underperformers, which Marino was one. I'm going to miss Marino. Marino was one of my favorite defensemen. When I'm talking with Adam, obviously, in episodes throughout the year last year, I always liked John Marino. And I liked Kevin Ball a lot. I thought Kevin Ball just wasn't utilized the correct way. I thought that he got extremely tired. He was playing a lot more minutes than he ever did last year. So I think he's going to really develop into a good player. And again, I think watch out for him in like 4 or 5 years to be a force in this league. As far as the Devils right now with free agency coming up, if I'm a betting man, I don't think Steven Stamkos will be a Devil, even though I hope I'm wrong. I think a lot of teams are really going to go after him. If I'm going to make guesses right now, I think he's going to be a Nashville Predator. I think it's just what they need, actually, a player like Steven Stamkos. But I've been wrong before. I might be wrong again, but it's everything that, again, Fitz has been trying to do with bringing that grit, bringing that physicality, getting bigger, getting heavier, really changing the mentality of the young core that it's not just going to be scoring goals, incredible passes, and speed that's going to win games. It's going to be hard work, board play, strong on the puck, winning those 50-50 battles. So I think we're getting to the point where you see Fitz has a master plan. And I think Fitz knows after last year, if there was another year like that coming up with Markstrom and not making as many moves, Fitz would be on the hot seat. I think we all know that. So I think Fitz is doing this now. He's going all in to win now, but also without sacrificing the future that he believes. And I believe that this team, after free agency and after the moves that we make, we're going to be competitive for years to come. And I really stand on that. I think last year with all the injuries and obviously the terrible goaltending and young players, I don't think you're going to see a season like that coming up this year. I think that the Devils are going to be very good and competing for a top spot in the Metro and maybe a top spot in the East. You never know, but it all depends. There's a lot more to come with free agency. Again, I'd love to see Adam Henrique come back to be in that Devils uniform. I would even put him at 3C, and I'd move Holla down probably to 4C and put Lazar on a wing with Cotter, newly acquired Cotter, and then you have McDermott who can come in for games as well. And then we talk about Dawson Mercer, right? So I spoke about if you did sign Pesci and if you do sign Brendan Dillon, your cap space is a little over 10 million still. Dawson Mercer, I see having a bridge deal. I think Fitz, and I hope Fitz wants him here. I think he's a phenomenal player. I really do. I think he had a down year as well, little streaky. He brings those elements to the team that are needed on a third line. I think he can eventually be a top 6 player forward, but he brings elements of strong physical play on the boards. He's always hungry for pucks. Yes, he's made defensive lapses, but he played 82 games, man. This kid grinds. This kid plays. He's going to be in the lineup. He's going to make mistakes, but I think he's going to score more goals this year. And I think he's deserving of a contract with what he's been through with the Devils organization. And there's a lot of upside to this kid. And I'm sure GMs are on the phone with Fitz asking about his availability in trades. And I'm sure Fitz said, listen, I'm not doing that. And he went above and beyond to make sure that if he was going to dangle Mercer at all, it was for a massive, massive, massive bargaining chip back. So, you know, I see Dawson Mercer with 10.5 cap left, signing about a $3.5 million deal for 3 years. I think it's a good bridge deal for him. I think it's team friendly, but it's also good for the player who knows he had a down year last year and could play a lot better. You know, so if that happens, you have $7 million left to play with. A player like Bertuzzi might be a little too expensive, you know, around the $5 million mark. Duclair could be around like the $4 million mark. You know, a player like Marcia Show is going to be a little bit more expensive. Steven Stamkos, you know, again, we talk about around the $4 million mark. And then you go back to players like Henrique and how we're going to really round out that bottom 6. But there's a lot that's going to happen. Adam and I are going to cover it. I'm going to try and get on here for a live, hopefully with Adam. Either way, if not tomorrow night, then maybe Tuesday night. Tonight is Sunday. We'll see. But it's exciting time for hockey. And you know, I know a lot of hockey fans, obviously if your team's not in it, complained about the Stanley Cup Finals being so long. It kind of had to happen with the travel, the way the travel was for Florida and Edmonton, which was pretty insane. Brutal mileage on planes, and just I liked it. The reason why I liked it is because it built the hype around the series a little bit more, and it jumped right into basically the draft. You know, that's what's cool about it, and that hockey is on the radar and staying on the radar through June is pretty incredible. You know, I loved seeing it. I loved just all the constant talk of hockey and going right into the draft, the talk of trading picks, the talk of trading players, the Devils getting their #1 goalie. It's just exciting. You know, now you're going into free agency and you have all of July to really see how this team becomes exactly what we want them to be and what Fitz wants them to be, which I think is going to be a combination of those phenomenal skilled players like the Jack Hughes, the Jesper Bratz, the Timo Myers. You know, these guys are phenomenal players. Timo is the heaviest guy in that top 6 right now. And that's where I think that Fitz is going to focus his attention to get that heavy guy similar to the way Timo plays on a line with Jack, which I think could do a world of wonders for that kid, but just really round out this roster. And I really think that top 6 forward that is signed is going to be a massive piece to what this Devils organization can do, not just this year, but the following year. I don't want Jeff Skinner. I just want to put it out there. You know, a lot of Devils fans are talking about Skinner coming here. I think that would be a terrible move by Fitz. I do not want him. I understand that he is a phenomenal talent on the offensive side of the puck. He doesn't play defense. And I know in the new NHL, you don't necessarily need to be so hyper-focused on defense. But to me, that doesn't win games down the stretch in the regular season, but more so in the playoffs. You saw what the playoffs did to these teams and how they played. You know, I was having a conversation with a casual hockey fan, one of my friends who watches during the playoffs and towards the end of the year. You don't see as many shots, right, in the playoffs because these are grinded out types of shifts where you're getting beaten up on the boards and you're battling constantly for pucks on the boards. It's about possession. It's about forechecking. And it's about utilizing the skilled players through forechecking and through neutral zone play. So it's a very different game in the playoffs. And the Devils were not built to be that team that can sustain a long run in the playoffs last year and the year prior. The year prior was absolutely incredible. The Devils overachieved a little bit, obviously, the most winning season in franchise history. But you saw how they were exposed to the Carolina Hurricanes in the second round. You saw that they were tiring them out. You saw that puck possession was extremely, extremely important. But more so, we were just outplayed by forechecking. We were outplayed by being young and not battling the way we should have. And now Fitz is really going into this year and saying, without saying, he's saying it to his team, I'm going to get the players that we need to be the team to beat in the Metro, to be the team that can easily beat the Rangers. It's not going to be easy to beat the Rangers. I'm trying to make a point here that we can go out and beat any team in the Metro. We can compete and get to the Eastern Conference Final. So I'm really excited, and again, I give Fitz an A for what he's been doing. I understand a lot of fans are a little upset about the Holtz and Schmid trade. I think this was a trade that needed to happen, not just for cap space, but for those players in general. I think that I guess you could say they overstayed their welcome. I think they had the chance to really develop with the Devils, and it just didn't work out. And I think it was time to move on. And I understand that it looks like on paper we were fleeced. I don't think so. I think we got a very good diamond in the rough back that is not costly at all with Cotter, and I'm really excited to see what he does. These next few days are going to be absolutely incredible. I appreciate you all listening. It is good to be back. It feels like it's been forever that we've gone on here and done an episode, and we're going to go live a few days this coming week. Adam and I are going to be on. He's like a man of many talents right now. He's covering, obviously, the free agency. He deals with the Nets, with his Nets podcast, and the Giants, and their offseason and coming up on their camp. So he's a busy man, so I'll hold him down for now, but he will be back, and the tandem of Adam and Danny will be back for a lot of episodes coming up. And we're going to make it a staple that every week from here on out that we're on together. We want to make sure that we are on together for you guys, but you're going to see me. Thank you guys so much for interacting with me on Twitter Space, on X. You guys are awesome. It's really great having conversations, but I love even more having the debates. It's hockey and fandom is phenomenal. It's to be able to have intellectual conversations back and forth with why you disagree or why you agree about a player, or the love for Holtz, the hatred for Holtz, how crazy it is that Schmid's traded, how it's important that Schmid's traded. It's fun, and it's great. So I appreciate all you guys on X, on YouTube, watching on YouTube, on our Instagram, on our Snapchat. You guys have been phenomenal, and Devil's Puck Luck is coming in with a lot of episodes coming up and some lives coming up. So make sure you follow us on all our social media. We're at Devil's Puck Luck. You're going to find us at NJDevilsPL on X, on Twitter. Give us a follow, subscribe. We're going to give a lot away. I am out of my mind, and I got more season tickets this year. I'm out of my mind. So we're going to give a lot away. We're going to see you guys at a lot of games. We're going to do a lot of post games. But now let's focus on the task at hand, and that is free agency and how Tom Fitzgerald really utilizes the cap that he now has available. I'm going to predict Brett Pesce is going to be signed relatively immediately. You're going to hear that about noon when free agency officially opens. But enjoy the free agency. There's a lot of crazy and great things around the league going on. Hockey is such an incredible sport, and free agency is so much fun to see what this Devils organization can do and what they're going to look like going into the 24-25 season. Until I see you all again, thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon. Danny checking out with Devil's Puck Luck.